The smoke still rose from the black earth as the wind moved across the burnt battlefield. Broken weapons scattered across the cracked ground, torn flags hanging from twisted metal bones of machines glowing with dying sparks. The sky above was gray with ash, and nothing moved except the slow drifting clouds. Logan Vale opened his eyes and blinked against the light. It was dim and soft, not from the sun but from the thin sheet of canvas above him. He tried to move, but pain screamed through his body. His chest burned, his left arm felt cold and numb, and something was wrapped tight around his ribs. Each breath felt like fire, and his vision blurred at the edges. He was alive, but he did not know how or why. The sounds were wrong. No guns, no orders, no cries of pain or roars of war, only the low whistle of wind and the slow creak of fabric above his head. He listened harder and heard nothing else, not even a footstep or voice. The silence was deep and thick, like a weight on his chest. He turned his head slowly, every muscle groaning with protest, and that was when he saw her. She was sitting on her knees at the side of his bed, her head bowed, her long silver hair hanging like a curtain over her face. She wore a thin cloth that looked like it once held bright colors, now dulled by dust and dirt. Her hands were folded in her lap, her skin a soft glowing blue, her body still and smooth. For a moment Logan thought she was a ghost or a vision born from pain or drugs. Then her eyes opened and looked at him, not with hate, not with fear, but with something like quiet waiting. She spoke in a soft voice that barely reached his ears. "I am yours now." Logan stared at her, confusion swirling in his broken mind. His throat was dry and his lips cracked. He tried to speak, but the words would not come. Only a rough sound like sand. He coughed hard, his body shaking with the effort. The girl moved quickly and brought a small bowl of water to his lips, holding it steady as he drank. The water was warm and tasted of metal, but it helped. His voice returned in a broken whisper. "Where are the others?" She did not answer right away. Her eyes dropped to the ground, and her voice came again, quiet and careful. "They left after the final battle. The command left this camp behind. I was told to stay with you." He looked around again. The tent was large but empty. No other beds, no gear, no weapons, only him and her, and a few supplies in one corner. The wind outside sounded like it was calling through a dead city. Logan felt a chill crawl through him, not from cold but from the weight of the moment. "Why would they leave you here with me?" The girl did not answer. She reached into the cloth at her waist and pulled out something small, and round it was a collar made of dark metal, smooth and polished. It had a glowing line of red symbols around the edge, and it pulsed faintly in the dim light. She placed it on the bed beside him, and her hands trembled. "This means I belong to you now," she said, her voice still calm, but her eyes wet. "I am a gift for your victory." Logan could not believe what he was hearing. The war had been brutal and messy, but this felt wrong, like something from a nightmare. Not from the world he knew. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but he had no strength for anger, only pain and confusion. He turned his face away and stared at the canvas above him again, trying to understand what kind of peace had been made while he slept. What kind of reward this was supposed to be. The girl did not move. She stayed by his side, hands still folded, eyes still low like a shadow, waiting for permission to breathe. Logan closed his eyes again and tried to rest, but the silence was no longer empty. It was full of questions, full of weight, full of her. That night, the wind grew louder outside the tent, and he woke in the dark to the sound of slow breathing near him, not his own, but hers. She was still there, sitting beside his bed like a statue, her eyes now open and watching the door. He spoke softly, his voice rough. "Do you have a name?" She nodded once and whispered. Desiree repeated the name in his mind, and then said it out loud. Swash smiled just a little, and the silence around them changed again. It was still heavy, but now it held a thread of something new, something human, something not yet broken and not yet lost. The day was quiet again. But it did not feel calm. It felt wrong, the kind of quiet that hides something heavy. Logan tried to sit up. His ribs screamed, his lungs felt tight, his skin burned where the bandages held old blood in place, but he forced himself to move his hand, reached for the water bowl, but it was gone, and so was the girl. Sarah was not beside his bed anymore. The space where she had knelt now empty. The collar still rested nearby, untouched, still glowing soft red, like a heartbeat in metal. Logan blinked and listened. Nothing, no sound from outside, no footsteps, no voices, just the wind again, always the wind, like a whisper that never stopped. He called her name once, soft and rough, Sarah, but no answer came. He waited 1 minute, then 2, then 5, then pain be damned. He rolled from the bed and dropped to the ground. His arm caught his weight, but barely. His legs shook, his whole body shook, but he crawled across the floor, pulling himself toward the flap of the tent. Then he saw her. She was lying behind a crate, not far from the bed, curled on her side. Her body still too still, her arms tight across her chest, her lips slightly open, her eyes half shut, and her skin Too pale, too blue, too cold. Logan dragged himself over and touched her shoulder. She did not move. He shook her gently, then harder still. Nothing. He leaned close and placed his ear near her lips and heard nothing. No breath, no sound, only silence again. But not the normal kind, the kind that follows a last breath. No, no, no. Pressed his hand to her chest and felt for movement, anything but. It was slow to slow her heartbeat, weak, like it wanted to stop. He grabbed the water bowl nearby, spilled half of it, trying to splash her face. Her skin shimmered, but she did not wake. Logan cursed under his breath and pulled the blanket from his own bed. He wrapped it around her, lifted her as best he could, and brought her closer to the fire pit. He fumbled with the fuel, started the heat again. The flames rose and the light danced, but her body stayed still. He held her hand, and it was cold. Her fingers limp, her skin thin. Then her chest moved, just a little, then again. Then her lips parted, and she coughed. A weak, broken sound, like air was trying to return. He leaned in closer and said her name again, this time like a plea, not a question. Astra. Eyes opened slowly, but they did not focus. Her mouth moved, but no words came, just a soft whimper. Her body shook under the blanket, and Logan pulled her close, trying to warm her, not with strength, but with will. Minutes passed, maybe more, and her breath came back, little by little. Her eyes blinked more often, and then finally, she whispered, "I am sorry." Logan looked at her, confused and angry, not at her, but at everything. "What happened?" She took a breath, then said, "I have not eaten in 3 days. Before they gave me to you, I had no food, no water. I thought if I stayed strong for one more day, I would be okay. I was wrong." She closed her eyes again, like she was ashamed. "I was weak. I failed." Logan shook his head slowly and said, "No, you were strong. You are still here. That means something." She looked at him, and her eyes shimmered with water, not from pain, but from something deeper, maybe trust, maybe guilt. He helped her drink, helped her eat something soft and warm, helped her sit near the fire where her color slowly returned, and her shaking stopped. That night, they sat in silence, her eyes on the flames, his eyes on her, not like a prize, not like a slave, but like a person who should not be broken like this. He asked her again why she had not told him she was starving. And she said because she was not supposed to ask for things, she was only supposed to serve, to wait, to obey. He told her that was not how it should be, not anymore, not here, she said. She did not know how to live in any other way. The fire cracked, the wind whistled outside, and the world stayed broken. But in that moment between two breaths, something small began to mend, not with big words or loud promises, but with a blanket, a bowl of water, and a voice that said her name like it mattered. Because it did. And for the first time, Sarah leaned just a little closer, and did not flinch when Logan looked at her, not like a master, not like a stranger, but like someone who had chosen to see her without chains. The morning came slow, with a weak light slipping through holes in the tent. The sky outside was still thick with smoke and dust, but the air no longer smelled like fire. It smelled like silence, and waiting. Logan opened his eyes to the soft sound of movement near his bed, and found Sarah already awake, already working. She was folding cloth, smoothing it with careful hands, her silver hair tied back with a strip of torn ribbon. Her face calm, but her eyes still full of something she tried to hide. Logan tried to sit up, his muscles tight and sore, but his ribs burned, so he stopped halfway and leaned back again. Sarah noticed and rushed to him, holding a cup of water and pressing it to his lips. Her touch was gentle, not cold, not forced. He drank slow, then pulled his head back and asked in a low voice, "Why are you still?" Harry. Sarah looked at the floor and said nothing for a long breath. Then she answered, soft like a secret, "Because you are the only one who did not throw me away." Logan felt something twist inside him, her words too heavy, too real. He looked at the collar still lying near his bed, untouched, still glowing with that faint red light. "I do not want a slave," he said, his voice flat, his chest tight. "I never asked for this." Looked up and said, "I know, but it is not what you want that matters. It is what they gave me to be." She turned and pulled a small bundle from her side. She opened it, and inside were marks from her past. Medals, cloth, strips with alien symbols, one broken shard that looked like a royal seal. "My family had power once," she said. "They called us chosen blood leaders in war, and keepers of peace when the war reached our world. I was taken by our own people to be traded for mercy, traded to humans like meat and numbers." Logan stared at the items, then at her. She held the bundle like it still meant something, like the past could still protect her, even though it had failed. "You were a noble?" he asked, voice dry. She nodded once. "Yes, now I am this." She pointed to herself, her collar, her plain clothes. "And you saved me, even if you did not mean to. You asked my name. You gave me water. You did not touch me, like the others would have." Logan tried to speak again, but stopped. There were too many thoughts, no clear words. He looked at her face and saw more than fear now. There was pain. Deep and old and sharp, you are not a thing, he said after a long pause. You are not broken, you are not mine. Sarah shook her head, not in anger but in disbelief. She whispered, then where can I go? The ones who gave me to you will kill me. If I run, the ones who see my collar will take me again, and if I hide, I will starve. I am safest with you, even if you do not want. My Logan had no answer for that, only silence, again only breath and pain and a growing shadow of choices too large for a soldier who just wanted peace that night. Sarah brought him food warm and soft, and he ate in silence. She sat across from him, hands in her lap, watching but not staring her face. Peaceful. In the firelight he asked her if she wanted to sleep. She said she did not need to, but later when he opened his eyes in the dark, he saw her curled on the ground near his bed, not far but not touching her back to the fire, her body still, her breath slow. She did not sleep like someone free. She slept like someone waiting for a command that would never come. Logan turned and looked at the stars through the hole in the tent, and wondered what kind of world he had woken into, what kind of war left gifts like this, what kind of peace made a girl like Sarah believe she was safer in chains than in the open sky. And somewhere deep inside him, a quiet voice whispered that maybe the real war had only just begun, and this time it would not be fought with guns, but with choices that could not be undone. Beside him, the girl once called Noble slept like a shadow, hiding from her own name. The next morning came with pale light and a cold breeze slipping through the seams of the old tent. Logan sat up slower this time, still hurting, but stronger than before. His wounds were not gone, but they no longer ruled him. Sarah sat across the fire, her arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes open but far away. He asked her what she was thinking, and she said she was listening, not to him, not to words, but to the land, to the quiet, to the way the wind carried sound, because something was changing, she said, and Logan did not doubt her. The supplies were low, only one more meal left, and no clean water. The medkit was almost empty, and the radio still gave only static. Logan stared at the broken comms, and knew they could not stay here much longer. Sarah said she knew of a place, not far, a hidden place, a shelter left from long ago. It was built by her people. She had only seen it once as a child, but she remembered the path, she remembered the stone door, and the cold air, and the red light above it that never stopped. Blinking, Logan asked if she was sure, and she nodded. He said he would go alone, but she refused, her face calm but firm. She said, you can barely walk, and I do not wish to wait behind again. I am stronger now because you gave me food, because you gave me space, and because you did not look at me like a thing, so I will go with you. He could not argue, not because he agreed, but because her words gave him no room to say no, and maybe deep down he was glad he would not be alone out there, and not with this silence. They packed what little they had and stepped out into the ruined world together. Ash crunched under their boots, and broken buildings watched them like ghosts. The air was heavy with old fire, and knew or fear the path Sarah chose led through a narrow canyon, where shadows moved without wind. They kept close, moved, slow eyes scanning every turn. Sarah carried a small blade taken from one of the crates. Logan held a metal rod like a staff. Each step was pain, each hour long, but they moved forward halfway. There they heard voices, not human, not alien, but something in between, rough speech, laughing, mocking words. Logan pulled Sarah behind a wall and peeked out. He saw 3 men, humans in old gear, not soldiers, not allies, looters. Maybe deserters, the kind who stayed behind to take what others left. One of them saw movement and shouted. The others followed, and the chase began. Logan and Sarah ran through rubble, through dust, through twisted steel, until they found the edge of a hill and slid down behind a broken wall. The men did not follow. Logan's heart pounded his side, screamed with every breath, but they were safe for now. Sarah held his arm, helped him stand, and led him forward again. Her face sharper, now more alert. They reached the hidden place by dusk. It looked like a mound of stone and dead roots, but Sarah found the mark, pressed a hand against it, and the red light above the door blinked once, then twice, then opened with a low hum inside. The air was cool and dry, the walls smooth, and silver machines lined the corners, and old lights flickered awake, one by one. The room was not big, but it was enough. Food rations lined the shelves, metal packs sealed tight. A water unit buzzed to life when touched. A medical pod stood in the back, waiting, glowing soft green. Logan dropped to his knees, not from worship, but from relief, his whole body shaking with exhaustion. Sarah smiled faintly, and brought him water, real water, cold and clean. He drank slow, and looked at her with eyes full of thanks. They rested for a while, but then something strange happened. A console in the corner beeped, and a soft blue light rose from the floor. A hologram appeared, an old alien man, his face like Sarah's, but older, sharper, colder. Logan watched as the hologram spoke in her language. Sarah stared, her face still, her hands tight, her breath short. She translated slowly, voice shaking. It is a message from my father. He says he traded me to the humans. Not just to stop war, but to end rebellion on our world. He says I was too loved by the people too dangerous to his rule, so he gave me away and told them I was a gift, but I was his burden, and he was glad to lose me. Her voice cracked at the last words, and she stood quickly running out of the room, her feet silent, but fast. Logan called after her, but she did not stop. He forced himself to rise every step a storm, and reached the outer door, but it was wide open. The night wind blew in, and the stars above looked cold and sharp. He stepped outside and called her name again, Sarah, but no answer. Came just silence and wind, and one set of footprints leading away from the only place that had ever been safe for both of them. The night was sharp and wide, the stars hung heavy above, and the ground was cold underfoot. Logan moved through the ruins outside the shelter, his breath rough, his side aching, his eyes scanning every broken shadow, every corner of stone. He called her name again, Sarah, but the wind took his voice and gave nothing back. He followed her tracks through old mud and dust, until they vanished under fallen beams and dead vines. He climbed over wreckage, reached a high wall, and stopped. He heard voices below, rough human voices, loud with laughter and threat. He crawled forward, slow and careful, and then saw her. Asura stood surrounded by 4 men, armed with blades and old rifles. They had gear marked with old Earth emblems, but nothing about them looked like real soldiers. Their faces were scarred and wild, their eyes locked on her like hunters on prey. One of them grabbed her arm and said something Logan could not hear, but her face did not break. She stood tall, her silver hair blowing in the wind, and her hands clenched at her sides. Then one of the men saw the collar. He let out a long whistle and said to the others, "This one's marked property. Look at that shine. Someone gave her to a high-ranking dog, and now she's just walking free." The second man laughed and said, "Maybe her owner died, and she's up for grabs. I'll take her first." Third man reached toward her, but stopped when a sound cracked through the night. It was Logan. He dropped down from the wall, his feet hitting the stone hard, his rod in his hands, his stance wide, his face dark with fury. "Back off," he said low and sharp. That men turned, surprised, then amused. One of them said, "And who are you?" "The owner. The pet may be bought." Logan did not answer. He stepped forward, eyes locked on the one who touched her again. "She is not yours, not anyone's. Back away now, and I will let you leave standing." The biggest man raised his rifle, but Logan was already moving. His rod slammed into the barrel, knocking it aside, then into the man's jaw, sending him down. The others rushed in, but Logan fought like a cornered storm, every hit fast and wild, not clean but full of weight. Man stabbed him in the side, but he twisted and dropped him with a blow to the neck. The second tried to grab Sarah, but she moved faster, pulled her blade and cut his leg. He screamed and fell. The last turned to run, but tripped on rubble and vanished into the dark. Logan stood over the last attacker, breathing heavy blood running down his side, his hand shaking, but still holding the rod. He turned to Sarah, and she was staring at him, not with fear, not with shock, but with something like awe. She stepped forward and said, "Why did you do that?" He looked at her and said, "Because they saw a slave, and I saw someone worth fighting for." She knelt beside him and helped him sit. She pulled the blade from his side and pressed a cloth against the wound. He hissed, but did not pull away. She reached into a belt and pulled out the collar. It was glowing again, but now cracked from the fight. She looked at it long and silent, then held it up and said, "This thing marks me, not just to you, but to anyone who sees it. They do not see a person, they see a thing." She tossed it to the ground and crushed it under her boot. The glow faded, the pieces scattered like dead light. Then she looked up and said, quietly, "But you saw me. You saw me from the beginning, even when I was scared, even when I did not believe I could be more than what they made me. You stood for me, and now you bleed for my." Logan smiled weakly and said, "Maybe I am just tired of watching good people be used up and thrown away." Sarah helped him up, and they moved back toward the shelter, her hand holding his arm, her eyes scanning the shadows as they walked. Logan whispered something only the stars heard. "If I must wear the mark, then let it be this, not the collar, but the choice to fight beside her, to bleed with her, to rise with her hand. Never let her be seen as a prize." Agonond, the broken collar behind them, lay still in the dust, no longer glowing, no longer feared, just metal, with no master asterisk. The shelter lights flickered when they returned. The door closed behind them with a hiss, and the air inside felt warmer than before, but not because of fire or machines. It felt different because they came back not as master and slave, not as broken soldier and forgotten girl, but as two people who had chosen to walk through blood and fear and not let go of each other. Logan leaned against the wall, breathing heavy. Sarah helped him sit and opened the medpod. The machine scanned his wounds and hummed as it began healing what it could. She stood near the console, her fingers brushing the screen, her face lit by blue light, but her eyes fixed on nothing. He asked what she was thinking, and she said the voices were back, not from her mind, but from the walls. The old place was waking up because someone with her blood had returned. She moved to a panel on the far side of the room, and placed her palm against it. It pulsed once, then opened to reveal a narrow stair carved into stone. She looked at Logan and said, "Come." He followed her, slow every step, a sharp breath. His side still bleeding, but not enough to stop him. Not now, not when her voice held something more than pain. They reached a chamber deep underground, where the air was cold and dry crystals lined the walls, pulsing with light and strange energy. In the center stood a platform surrounded by pillars, each one marked with symbols and names, all in a language he could not read. Sarah stepped onto the platform and closed her eyes. The room responded. Lights, rising machines, awakening. A hologram formed in the air, an older woman with the same silver hair, the same sharp jaw, but eyes filled with sorrow. The voice that followed spoke in Sarah's tongue, but she translated between breaths. "This was my grandmother," she said once. "The speaker for our people." She held the blade of truth and passed it to my mother. Then to Mitha, hologram shifted, showing a younger Asira, dressed in royal armor, holding a long blade with glowing edges. Crowds gathered around her, cheering. Banners flying above. That was the day, they said, I would lead the warriors, that I would protect the peace. I swore to uphold the oath of the bloodline. Then came war. The image changed. Explosions, fires, cities falling, her people running. Her voice cracked as she said, "My father feared I would take his throne, so he broke the oath and gave me to the enemy." Logan watched all of it and felt the weight of what she had been forced to carry. She turned to him and said, "I am not just a slave. I was never just a gift. I was a shield for my people, and they threw it away. Now I have no place to return, no people to stand for me, no name that means anything." Logan stepped forward. Despite the pain, his hand reached for hers, and he said, "Then make a new place, make a name that is yours, not theirs, not his." She stared at him and said, "Why would you help me? Why would you care?" "Because I was a weapon too," he said. "The war made me something I did not ask to be, but you saw past that. You gave me back something I did not know I had lost." She looked at the blade on the wall, the one from the vision, and stepped toward it. It was real, not light, not memory, forged of dark metal, with lines of power running through it. She lifted it, and the crystals around the room changed color, glowing violet and gold. The platform shook, and the pillars lit up with new names, hers among them. She turned back to him, the blade resting at her side, her voice steady and clear. "Then let this be my first act, not as a slave, not as a daughter, but as myself. I stand with you, Logan of Earth, not because I owe you, not because I was given, but because you made a choice, and I choose you." The room calmed, the light settled, and the silence that followed felt like peace, not fear. They left the chamber together, her blade at her side, his hand resting on her shoulder. The path before them, dark but not empty, because now they had something stronger than orders or old blood. They had a reason. They had each other, and the world above would soon learn what that meant. The next morning came without warning. The shelter lights blinked once, then dimmed. The machines hummed low and silent, as if holding their breath. The air felt heavy, not with dust but with purpose, the kind of quiet that comes before us. Stood near the door, armored now, not in human gear but in something ancient, something pulled from the chamber below, silver and black plates, shaped by alien hands, glowing softly with energy. His side still ached, but he moved like a man who had made peace with Panacera. Stood beside him, not as a shadow, not as a servant, but as a force wrapped in power. Her long blade rested on her back, her eyes calm but sharp, her steps light but firm. Her presence filled the space like fire that refused to be put out. They had stayed one more night in the shelter, gathering what they could, resting when they could, watching the skies through cracked screens, watching as strange ships flew low across the dead cities, watching as signals lit up across the map. The war was not over. It had only changed. Shapia Sarah told him the truth behind the silence. This planet was not free. It had been claimed again. Not by one army, but by many scavenger fleets, Empire scouts, rogue human squads, all hungry for the spoils left behind. One of them had sent a message to Logan's old unit, a scan of him in the alien armor marked with the warning, "The human has taken the air. She is alive. She is armed. He stands with her hand." That was enough. They would come for him. They would come for her, not to rescue, not to reason, but to erase. Logan looked at the map and marked a path through the ruins to the nearest tower. If they reached it, they could send a message to the stars, to the few allies they had left, maybe even to others, like Asera, hiding in silence, waiting to rise. But the way was long, and the enemies were close. Asera asked if he was ready, and he said no, but that never stopped me before they stepped out into the day. The wind sharp, the ground rough, the city around them waking with movement, shadows slipping between walls, drones buzzing overhead. footsteps too far to chase, but too near to ignore. They moved fast, but quiet. Asera led them through old streets, covered in ash. Logan kept watch, scanning rooftops, alleyways, corners where death could wait. Then the trap. Came a burst of sound, a flash of light, the ground shook, and walls fell behind them, blocking their path. 5 armored soldiers stepped forward, weapons raised, faces hidden behind black glass. One of them spoke, returned the girl, and we will let you leave. She is not yours. She is marked by alien law. She belongs to the council now. Logan stepped in front of her, his voice clear. She belongs to no one. The soldiers moved without warning, shots fired, beams cut the air, but Asera leapt before they landed. Her blade spun with light, cutting one weapon in half. Her foot slammed into another chest plate, throwing the man back. Logan charged the third, using his armor's strength to throw him into a wall. His fists were not fast, but they were final. Each hit a promise, each strike a vow. The fourth soldier fired a dart into Asera's back, but she turned unfazed, eyes glowing, her blade rising like fire. She brought it down with a scream, not of pain but of power. The last soldier dropped his weapon and ran, but she did not chase. She turned to Logan and helped him stand, blood dripping from his lip, dust on his face, but his eyes bright. They reached the tower as the sun began to fall, the sky turning red and gold. They climbed to the top and sent the signal, a wide burst, not hidden, not soft, a message written in her voice. I am not gone. I am not a slave. I am not your weapon. And then in his voice, she stood for me when I could not stand. Now we stand for others. Signal burned through space, loud enough for allies, loud enough for enemies, loud enough to start something new. Asera looked at him. On that roof, the wind blowing her hair, the stars rising above, she said, "Do you still think the war is over?" He smiled through blood and said, "I hope not, because now we are ready for it." And somewhere across the stars, something answered, not with words, but with light.